Imagine a world where Izuku Midoriya didn't inherit One for All, but instead had the ability to bring his imagination to life. Ink Beast's tactical traps summon weapons all from the tip of his brush. Today we dive into a brand new what if. What if Deku had ink creation? So, Deku's quirk is called ink manifestation, a powerful artistic ability that lets him draw objects, tools, or living creatures, then bring them to life for a limited time. The more detailed the drawing is, the more powerful and long-lasting the summon will be. But the catch? It takes extreme focus, speed, and creative vision under pressure. At a young age, Deku was already sketching wolves, swords, and wings, but with his practice and analysis, his art became his weapon. Izuku, in this version, at home he would train quietly, sketching his own animals, and develops his own battle art style. His hero notebook would actually be a literal spell book in this version. He even learns to draw with both hands at once, sketching a hawk in one and a tiger in the other during school. He would essentially be playing at the park with his friends with Bakugo, as he wouldn't be one of those bullies. He would persuade Bakugo into being humble with his quirk and using it for good. So Bakugo in this version would not be a hothead. Izuku would then begin to study the art of Kung Fu. At first he would like it a lot, but he wanted to find a fighting style that was more smooth. Like, let's just say he wanted to move like water, being very fast but fluid while painting his constructs. So, Izuku would find some ancient scrolls in the library. He would find usage of taijutsu. Then it would come to Izuku's mind that he could use scrolls instead of notebooks, as they would be much more efficient. So essentially, Izuku would begin to use taijutsu, as he would move like water, fluid and blending in with the wind. Izuku in this version would be some sort of a womanizer. Lots of girls would always surround him wherever he went. Bakugo would also get his fair share of this, as he would be hanging out with Izuku for a long time. For pretty much the entire day, Izuku would be showing off to Bakugo and these girls his quirk and how he can create flower pots, as he would begin giving flowers to girls left and right. And he would essentially have the best wingman Bakugo, and he would also be the best wingman for Bakugo as well. Izuku would then have the idea not to create animals that are already alive, that are already not to create animals that already have been put into existence. He would create his own, like tigers with wings, or maybe even a dragon. He would combine many animals, allowing him to make constructs that can fly. He would then think to make wings and ink hawks that would scout the areas. These would all be useful skills that Izuku would be using at just 4 years old. We now skip to when Izuku's about 14 and he's in the 8th grade. So Izuku would be walking home, as he would be walking through a tunnel. He would hear a sewer cap pop open behind him, instantly turning around. He would pull out his scroll as he seen the sludge villain. Sludge villain would lunge at him without saying a word. Izuku would make an ink wall before constructing a tiger which would tear the sludge villain apart, as he would essentially cause the sludge villain he wouldn't cause pain. I was about to say he would cause him pain. He would just be stalling until a pro hero would arrive. And there it was, All Might. He would say, "I am here," huh? Looks like the solution's already solved. As the sludge villain would essentially just be in Deku's Ink Tiger's mouth. As All Might would see this, he would see Izuku holding a scroll and a paintbrush, and see the tiger chewing up the sludge villain. He would say, "Kid, is this your doing?" As Izuku would say, "Yes, it is." And Izuku would be like, "Hey, can I get your autograph? I mean, don't really need it. I just want to show it to my mom or maybe post it online or something." And he starts yapping. I mean, he's not like a nerdy type. He's not like a fanboy. He's like calm and collected, but he does have some glimpses of his old personality of being a fanboy, like, "Oh my!" So he would essentially ask for his autograph. He'd get it, and All Might would ask the big question, "What's your quirk?" As Izuku would say, "Ink creation. Essentially, I can create constructs of anything I can imagine by drawing them. The more detailed, the stronger and the longer they can last." As All Might would say, "That's a pretty promising quirk. Saying you have an imagination, as I believe you do." And because he would look over to the tiger with wings, as Izuku would say, "Yeah." And All Might would essentially just get out of there, regretting not asking him if he wanted to be a successor. So now we skip to the UA entrance exam. So Deku would be walking up to the gates, and he would see Bakugo first. He would also see a girl panicking, so he would try to go walk up to her. But Tenya Ito would stop him, saying, "Hey, I know you're not trying to go distract that girl. I will not allow you to distract that girl." As Deku would say, "Oh, okay." And he would essentially just go to Araka anyway, saying, "Hey, you nervous?" As Araka would say, "Yeah, I mean, this kind of does decide the rest of our lives, doesn't it?" But Deku would say, "Don't think that way. You could be a model or something if you don't make it as a hero. Because you are a pretty lady as well." As Araka would start beginning to blush, as Deku would just walk off closer to the gate, as President Mike would say, "Go, go, go. There's no countdowns in a real battle." and essentially, Izuku would just be running while sketching a giant ink rhino, he would get on his back as it would charge through machines like a wrecking ball. Then he would pull out some trio ink hawks to scout out more robots in the area. He would then draw wings onto his rhino, allowing it to fly, and he would essentially just drop on the head of mini robots before charging into them. Izuku would be on a massacre. He would be getting robot after robot, as he would quite literally be able to see every single robot and have enough time to calculate all the points that he would get. Izuku would come to the conclusion that he had about, let's say, 89 robot points. So, as he's thinking this, just riding on his rhino in the air, he would see Araka trapped onto a rock with one of his hawks. As he would charge to the area, summoning a ink gorilla to lift the rubble from her right before the 0-pointer could crush her. Izuku would then pop in, carrying her away on his flying rhino. As Araka would say, "Oh, you're that boy from earlier." As Izuku would say, "Yeah." He would give her a little smirk, and he would essentially just take her to Recovery Girl. As he would carry out the rescue, making sure he gets his hero points. As he would get 80 rescue points because this man literally stopped his testing just to help another person. So he would fully carry out the rescue. So now Izuku would accumulate about, so let's say 89 robot points. So let's say 169 hero points, and he would know he passed. He would just tell his mom how many robot points he got, and they would celebrate as the letter would come in a week later, and then the classes would begin quickly after that. So now we have the Quirk apprehension test. So they would be walking into the room, and as they settled down, Aizawa would wake up and tell them to throw their uniforms on and follow him outside. So once outside, Aizawa would essentially toss the ball to Deku, saying to throw it as far as he can. As Izuku would construct a catapult with his ink, a little mini catapult, which would be powered by his Quirk. So let's say he does the most detailed drawing ever. So it would be one of the best catapults ever, as it just launches the ball at least 1,000 meters. Yeah, so everyone would be amazed and would say, "Whoa, he can create abilities by drawing them, or he can create things by drawing them." As everyone would be like, "That looks pretty fun. Can't wait to use my Quirk." And Zawa would say, "Fun? You think this is fun? Well, let's up the stakes. The person who comes in last is expelled." As we would end the test, Deku getting first place, as he literally can do anything. Momo Yaoyorozu got first place in the original, but he can literally do everything Momo can do and better. Like anything he sees Momo do, he's gonna be like, "Oh, let me show her how to do it." And he would get first, she would get second, and Bakugo, being stronger than the original, would get third. So we now have the hero versus villain trials. Still don't know what to call it, but they would be waiting for the last period of the day as All Might would come through the door with his trademark, "I am here." And Izuku, having already seen All Might, he's not too surprised, but he would be kind of surprised because he didn't know All Might would be teaching at UA. So essentially the teams will be matched up. In this version, Deku's gonna actually be Deku's gonna be teamed up with Momo Yaoyorozu. They would be wondering how, All Might would be wondering how they would go together, as they did get first and second and have similar abilities to construct things. So essentially they would be on the same team, and the other girl seeing this would not be too happy with that, especially Araka, as she was hoping he would be on his team, as they would probably get an instant victory. But as soon as they would begin, it would be Bakugo and Tenuita versus Izuku Midoriya and Momo Yaoyorozu. So right before the match would begin, Izuku would just be looking at Momo, as he would say, "So, how do you construct things?" As she would say, it's kind of embarrassing. I eat things and I can then use the materials to construct items. As Izuku would say, that's pretty cool. So, kind of like poop, huh? As she would begin to say, huh? Yeah, kind of. But Izuku would say, yeah, it's okay. I can paint. And then, they just come to life. As Momo would say, well, that's pretty much a better power because I can't construct anything. But you can imagine something and make it reality. So basically, this man is the Toon Force. But I digress. So now the match would begin. Izuku would tell Momo to get behind him as he would form a fake room that would be almost the same as the room that they were in. So inside this room, Izuku can basically just control it to do anything he does. So, anything he wants, So, let's say Bakugo runs into the room. Momo and Izuku are inside a ink-created box in the ceiling, watching. As Bakugo would enter the room, and Deku would close the opening, shaking up the room, making it turn and spin in all kinds of directions. He would call this omnidirectional box, as the box would begin to close smaller and smaller, and this would actually begin to make Bakugo smaller and smaller. So Bakugo would be put into the size of a Lego, let's say that, as he would coat Bakugo's body with ink, making him able to control him. So he would just draw a little Bakugo-shaped thing in his scroll, and it would look just like Bakugo, as it would go back to the room, the bomb room, saying, that Izuku, he beat me up. As Tenya Ida would look at Bakugo saying, why are you black and white? As Bakugo would say, well, that ink is pretty strong, and he is kind of way smarter than me and better than me, and Deku just begins to say everything that Bakugo would not say. And Bakugo, on the other hand, his point of view would be, he'd just be in a box, and he would feel his body begin to shrink even more and more, as Momo and Izuku would get out of the box on the ceiling. They would go to open Bakugo's box, seeing him tiny. Bakugo would be like, hey Izuku, put me back to size now. As Izuku would say, I don't think so. My ink sculpture is going to touch the bomb right now. So until I disperse him, you're not going to be up to size. As Bakugo would shoot his tiny explosions, which would be like sparks. They would be like nanometers. They would not be powerful at all. As he would look at his hands and say, dang it, what can I do? As he literally would not be able to do anything. I don't know why he's thinking of a solution. But he would try to escape when Momo and Deku are like, bring their attention to something else, as they're kind of bored. As Deku would feel his construct touch the bomb, as he would say, okay, that's it. And he would see Bakugo trying to escape, as he would just flick Bakugo away before turning him big again, which would send Bakugo flying into the wall very slowly. And it would almost seem as he was in slow motion, because he was like growing while getting flung. So he just got flung, but he started growing. So as he's growing, he started getting like heavier. So the gravity would pull him down, and he would hit his back on the floor. My bad if I'm over explaining myself. But now we get into the USJ arc. So everyone would sign their permission slip before getting on the bus. As, let's say, everyone's on the bus talking about how Izuku's definitely the strongest in the class. They at first thought Bakugo or Todoroki, but Izuku easily took care of Bakugo and with a good strategy, and Momo wouldn't have to do any work. As Izuku would speak up saying, the boy should always do the hard work first. They say ladies first, but how could I let a pretty lady do all the work? As he would look at Momo with a smile on his face, and all the other girls would get jealous, as Arako would just be looking at him with the eyes that are in the thumbnail. So, now they arrive at USJ. The Pro Hero 13 would give their boring speech, and we just have the events. Well, what would we have? Let's see. They would get to the USJ. The villains would been poured in. Deku, noticing this, would notice Aizawa's face would be shocked. So he would create some constructs right away. He would create a big wall, a big box surrounding all of his classmates, as he would sense that portals would attempt to open, but it wouldn't work. Once closed, he would open the box again, saying, "How dare you try to put your hands on my ladies? You will pay." As he would create wings to put on his body and a sword, as he would lunge at Shigaraki, as he would just charge the sword straight to his shoulder, making him fall over in pain, and he would call the Nomu. But right before Kurigiri could even open the portal, he would stab his metal plate, making Kurigiri essentially return to the form of Aizawa's friend. Aizawa, seeing this, would be stunned, as he would go over saying his name, but he would have already passed away. As Izuku would turn to the direction of the rest of the villains. He would fly over to them at incredible speeds, being angry at them even attempting to hurt any of the females in his class. So he would charge at everybody. He would charge at one of the villains, kicking him up in the air before letting him come down onto a rhino horn, breaking his back. And he would then look over at the girls and smile, but he would not notice two other villains would come by. Then he would fluidly dodge out of the way, being so smooth he would look like he had turned into ink itself. The fluidity of Izuku's fighting style would be amazing, as he would be gently slithering through the villains' attacks, and he would create a snake that would bite the villains, injecting them with ink, but this ink would not be any regular ink. It would be sleeping gas ink. So basically, Izuku would make them fall asleep. Let's just say that. So Izuku would use his snake to go by. Then he would use his trio hawks to scout the area, and he would see other villains in the water, as he would summon a flying beluga whale. No, not beluga whale. Let's just say he would create a flying shark that would go over to that water area, and it would begin to chomp on the villains. As Izuku would say, "Okay, now all the villains are taken care of. Now, shall we?" As I honestly forgot what they were about to do in the USJ, but they would just begin to train, I guess. So, as the training would be finished, they would all go back home. The world would not be notified about how villains attacked, as no one would be injured. But Izuku would end up telling his mom he had saved these ladies from a couple of villains, as he wouldn't know what he had just done, but he had basically taken on one of the head members of the Villains Association. So essentially, all the other villains would kind of be out of their spirits, as Shigaraki is out of the question. He's in jail, but he would ultimately be breaking out of prison, by All For One and the Nomus. And now we will have the All For One arc. Now we'll have the UA Sports Festival. Yeah. Now we get into the obstacle race. Izuku would just hop on an ink cheetah, he would hop on a giant ink hawk. Never mind, he would actually get his own wings and fly. So he would win that. Not really much anyone could do. And he would also make the floor slippery with ink, so it was hard for everyone else to maneuver. And Todoroki would actually be doing him a favor, using his ice, freezing the ink, making it even more slippery. So it was essentially just Todoroki, Bakugo, and Izuku in that race, but Izuku would end up winning. Now the cavalry battle, Izuku's team would win, and Izuku would have girls on his team only. But now we get to the 1v1 battles. As Izuku would say his speech, he would be saying, "I believe in this world where everyone has superhuman abilities, even those with those abilities. The ladies should not be treated the way they are. I believe the ladies are not treated well enough. That is why I will win it for them." As the entire crowd, the girls in the crowd, would begin to scream and be like, "Izuku! Oh, Izuku!" And the first battle would begin, Shinso versus Deku. Shinso would begin to talk about how ladies are dumb and they shouldn't be treated well. I think they're already treated well enough. But what's your take on that? Izuku would not respond. Being grateful, Araka would have gathered intel on him. But Izuku would end up creating a ink rhino. That would basically be his not his trump card, but his go-to move that he would use all the time. It's pretty efficient. So the rhino would charge at, I honestly forgot this man's name. Shinso, yeah. So the rhino would charge at Shinso, and he would narrowly dodge with his leg being hit. This would actually cause more damage than it would have originally. His leg would bend backwards in a way, and he basically fractured it, and he could not walk on it anymore. As Izuku would then charge in with a punch before landing a kick straight to the stomach, sending him flying off the platform. All the girls in the crowd would go crazy, and Inko, watching on TV, would be excited. But Todoroki, seeing this, was not happy, as his next match would be against Izuku. The match would start, and Izuku, before doing anything, would, how do I put this? He would blow a kiss to the crowd, and all the girls would go, "Ah!" as they would begin to fight over who he blew it to, and then they would watch as Deku would charge at Todoroki, narrowly dodging his ice, creating ice skates out of ink, skating on the ice before kicking Todoroki square in the face with them, leaving a giant scar across his face, sending him off the platform in one blow, as Izuku would return back to the waiting area. he would then see Todoroki getting chewed out by Endeavor. Then his match with Bakugo would begin. Midnight would say, "Final round, Izuku Midoriya versus Bakugo Katsuki." As Bakugo would charge in as soon as the match begins, throwing an explosion at Deku, narrowly dodging, saying, "Don't mess with my face now," as he would then paint a shield he would paint a sword and wings onto his back as he would fly at Bakugo, and Bakugo would begin to narrowly dodge his sword attacks before essentially Deku would just get a slight cut on Bakugo, and then his ink would be taken into play. As Bakugo jumps back after getting a pretty deep gash, he would see the ink going into his body. This would make him very sleepy, as Bakugo would just begin to fall unconscious, and Izuku would be the winner. So, now Izuku would look at the crowd, put his fist up, and yell, "I am the winner! I am absolute!" As the crowd would just go crazy, saying, "He's so cool! He's such a good painter! He's so creative!" And they're just glazing this man, and he's just having a great time. He would get home. Uncle would be so proud of him. And we now get the All for One arc. Or no, we get the Hero Killer arc. So going into Hosu, it would be in Hosu and Noble. First, Deku would decide his hero name, and he would end up getting the hero name Sai. And getting recognition from like a lot of heroes, he wouldn't be in Endeavor's agency. Let's just say he's in Night Eye's agency. And Night Eye tests him, seeing if he can get in. And Deku wouldn't care about the All Might posters. But he wouldn't need to do anything he wouldn't need to jump back and forth on the walls or anything. But he would get a little paint on them. So he would eventually take the stamp from Night Eye and end up stamping it himself. Now, he's in Night Eye's agency, and he'll be patrolling with Lemillion, with Muriel, right? And he would walk by an alleyway, seeing Ari, a little girl, scared, and he would go up to her and say, "Is that man bad?" As Ari, with fear in her eyes, would not say anything. Izuku, seeing this, would instantly get super mad, as he would look at, what's his name? What's bro's name with the transfiguration or something? Is it Chisaki? No, Overhaul, yeah. His real name is Chisaki, but his villain name is Overhaul. So he would look up at Overhaul with fear in his eyes, as he would tell Muriel to watch the streets, as he would say, "Watch this little girl," as he would go into battle immediately, sending a ink tiger at Overhaul, instantly breaking off his mask. Then Overhaul would have to resort to his trump card, after Deku would be pushing him, as Overhaul would say, "You're a cocky little brat, aren't you? Unfortunately for you, I'm gonna use my trump card." As Izuku would look at Overhaul, saying, "This is even my final form," as Deku would go through a Quirk awakening, as he would surround his body with ink, making ink armor. And he would essentially construct himself. So he would gain wings and boots like propellers on the back of his shoes, and a Hermes type, let's say a Hermes type thing. So I'll put on the screen. So I don't know why I was thinking Hermes, but this is what it would look like. So now Izuku would charge at Overhaul as he would flap his wings, creating ink, causing ink to go everywhere, blinding his sight, before Izuku would stab Overhaul right in the shoulder, causing him to pass out due to the ink. They would then arrest him and end up finding out that he was responsible for a lot of Quirk kidnappings, which is basically the kidnapping of kids that have good quirks and can be put to like criminal use. So now they would Night Eye would end up getting all the credit for this, Night Eye would get all the credit for this, and they would make their way to Hosu, as Tenya Ida would be looking for revenge. Izuku would tell him not to, as it would be a disgrace to the woman who gave birth to him and his brother. And Tenya Ida would be very mad at Izuku for saying that, but Tenya would end up getting bodied. He would be paralyzed, and he did exactly what Deku told him not to do, and guess what happened? So now Izuku would rush in with Todoroki, as Stain would end up trying to stab Deku. He would see Ida paralyzed and blood on Stain's tongue, realizing that was Ida's blood, and he probably had to draw blood and lick through blood for them to be paralyzed. Him noticing this very quickly would end up stabbing Stain, taking care of him very quickly without having to go into his final form. Now, we have once again Night Eye and Endeavor would take the credit for this, and we now have the All for One arc. Essentially, Izuku would have already solved two big crimes, technically by himself. So they already moved him up to the 12 ranked hero, as he was quite popular, and there was a vote set in that he should be 12. Now we get into the All for One arc. So All for One would notice the 12 ranked hero is kind of a problem. He had already taken out two big villains in the city that were helping to distract others from the Villains Association that were actually the big dogs. So essentially they were creating a shield for the Villains Association to do things and would not be noticed. I just had a voice crack. But besides the point, they would rush in, and Shigaraki would be sitting there in the building. Izuku would end up taking him out, putting him to sleep, before looking at Toga. Toga would already have a big crush on this dude, as he just stabbed Shigaraki and had blood on his ink knife. So she would get an obsession with Izuku, just like in the original. And Izuku would end up taking her out along with Dabi. Then they would meet All for One. he would send out a Nomu, which they haven't seen before. And in this version, they would be much more powerful, as they would be accustomed to more creative abilities of others, like immunity to poison. So Izuku would not be able to just use his ink to make them go to sleep, just like he's done for the past 40 minutes. Alright, but so they All For One sends out a Nomu, and essentially that Nomu would be way stronger than in the original, but Izuku would end up taking it out, finding its weak point, and destroying it very quickly. And let's say he would go out to the battle of All For One and All Might. All Might would be getting cooked. I mean, Gran Torino would be helping out just a little bit, but there's not really anything they could do by themselves. So All Might would use a Texas Smash, which would ultimately break All For One's shield. As Izuku, seeing this opportunity, he would rush in using his final form. He would say, "Supreme Evolution," as he would once again get his wings, and he would be in the air flying, before then saying, "All Might, run." He would begin to charge up all the ink he could muster. So he would essentially create a nuclear bomb out of ink, as he would say, "Nuclear destruction." This bomb would hit All For One head on, not even completely destroying him, but it would end up completely destroying half the city. So let's say it's not a nuclear bomb, but it's like a bomb. It's like nuclear to some extent, and it's not that powerful. I mean, it's made of ink. So it's like a watered down. Let's just say you put a nuclear bomb. Let's just say you put a regular bomb in water, and then it explodes and breaks 2 blocks. So Izuku would end up defeating All For One, and All Might would end up being in a small form, and En would say, "You're next." As the next year, Izuku, during the rankings, the hero rankings, Izuku would end up being number 1 hero, with the retirement of All Might. Coming in at second place would be Bakugo Katsuki. Now, this is where we'll be ending this video. If you made it this far, please like and subscribe, and see ya.